Hi everyone. I don't often do camera reviews, as I don't like to dwell too much on things like buttons and batteries, and nearly all cameras seem to have them these days. However, I'll happily share my favourite photos taken with the Fujifilm X100F, along with some thoughts about using the camera for the past few years. So back in my first ever YouTube video, just over 2 years ago, I showed photographs from a trip to Zambia. The simple story I was telling was that for a maybe once-in-a-lifetime trip, the only camera I used was this great little camera. Using it in Zambia was a big vote of confidence, and every scene you'll see here is another thumbs up for the camera. It is excellent in so many different photographic and social scenes. I don't feel silly bringing it out with friends, and I can more easily use it at concerts without freaking out security guards. Since 2012, I have used the first 4 versions of the X100. This 4th edition was the first that made me stop and think, what more do I really need? I know that good changes have been made with the X100V, but months after it has been released, it looks like it's the first that I won't be buying, well, not for a long while at least. I'd say the first reason to love the X100F is its ergonomics, more plainly, the way it feels to use, the way it feels physically and feels psychologically too. This is Fuji's masterstroke, I think. Way back when they launched the X series, some weirdo at the company must have made the crazy suggestion, let's make cameras that appeal to people who love cameras. And so they did. And when you pick up the X100F, it feels like you're holding a camera, not a computer with a camera attached to it. It's a mixture of the dials, the more intuitive menu system, even the size of the camera is more discreet and more portable than most. I admit I'm not a great fan of the lifty-uppy ISO dial. I much prefer the separate and tactile dial of the X-T3. The Optical Viewfinder should get a mention as part of the way it feels to use the camera, but I'll be honest, I very rarely use it. It's nice knowing it's there, I think, but I love seeing the exposure in the viewfinder, so the electronic viewfinder works just great for me. The way the camera looks in itself is fantastic, and not a superficial detail, I don't think. People react warmly to it, with only occasional exceptions. There's nothing out of place about its retro looks. It doesn't feel at all gimmicky or tacky. It's simply consistent with what makes a certain photographer like me happy. Another thing to love is that it continued to improve the autofocus over the previous models. For me, the main selling point of each new Fujifilm camera has been the improvement of autofocus. With the X100F, it reached a point where I just stopped thinking about it. I've never been one for using special settings like face or eye tracking. I know that some cameras even have animal face detection these days. Sony users can no doubt easily switch their focus to the smile of a passing bumblebee. However, I have no such aspirations. The X100F autofocuses, and it does it well. I know I said at the start that I don't like chatting too much about batteries, but the battery really is another reason to love the camera and to upgrade from previous models. Those cameras used the thinner, smaller battery, and if I remember correctly, I could get through at least a few of them in a day. The other helpful thing about the battery is that it's the same model as my other 2 Fujifilm digital cameras, the X-T3 and the X-E3. As an aspiring minimalist, albeit with 3 digital Fuji cameras, I appreciate the interchangeability between them and the need for only one charger type. The leaf shutter isn't something I usually think too much about, but therein probably lies its success. It's very close to silent. If I'm photographing quiet events or even doing street photography, it helps me to be less conspicuous. I appreciate that all mirrorless cameras have silent electronic shutters, but they can result in a rolling shutter effect where the image is slightly warped. Using the mechanical shutter avoids this. I have especially appreciated the quiet of the shutter when I've been on long bus and train journeys, as I always enjoy taking photos out of the window. I think that if with each shot there was a noticeable click of the shutter, or God forbid a clash of the mirror, I would be much more self-conscious about disturbing those around me. The leaf shutter is also useful in allowing a high flash sync speed, but that's not something I have used too often. Just thinking aloud, I'm not sure if I own this camera because I love its field of view, or if I love the field of view because of the influence of using this great line of cameras over many years. It has certainly shaped my photography. However, more recently I have been attracted towards a slightly wider field of view, and with the wide-angle converter, the X100F has the equivalent of a 28mm lens in full-frame terms, which I love to use. An additional conversion lens is available to switch the field of view to the equivalent of 50mm. I've used this on 1 or 2 occasions with a previous model, but not on the X100F. So if you're here considering buying this camera, it's simply not true that it's a 100% fixed lens camera. There's a little more flexibility than you might initially be led to think. Also, with the second version of the conversion lenses, the camera automatically recognizes that the lens is attached and records the new focal length in the EXIF data. Previously, you had to select the conversion lens in the menu, and of course, I always forgot to do this. This feature is only available using the Mark II lenses and with the X100F and V, and I assume future versions. I'll put links to the conversion lenses in the description, and the cameras too if you want to check them out. I must add that in the past year or so, I have been using the camera a little less often than when I first bought it, recently favouring my X-T3 and enjoying trying out different lenses. I didn't take it to Niagara Falls last year and missed having the internal ND filter to slow the rushing water a little. That's another reason to love the camera. No single camera can do everything, but the X100F has been the perfect camera for me in so many situations. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments and I'll do my very best to answer them. Thanks for watching, for thumbs upping and for subscribing. Please check out my new Instagram account, my Patreon page, plus more fun links in the description. See you all very soon. Thanks again.